Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today's Monday, which means it's time for an episode of Loadout, the series where you guys, the viewers, get to pick a gun and customization for me to use. The way you do this is you leave a comment down below, letting me know what kind of weapon and accessories you'd like me to run with in Battlefield 5, and I will pick one of the top-rated comments for the next episode. Today's top comment comes from Super Chris Gamer Fortnite, which is an amazing screen name. He says, the German Paratrooper Loadout, the FG42 with iron sights. Gadgets, he says, choose whatever you like. I went with the ammo pouch, and then we have AT mines, incendiary grenades, or the AT grenade pistol, which is always fun. Secondary is the Walther P38. Now, the FG42 is one of my favorite support weapons. It's got one of the fastest TTKs out of all the support guns, aside from maybe like the MG42 or some of the other medium machine guns. But as far as a run and gun, aim down sight anywhere weapon, the FG42 is incredibly deadly. However, it's held back by its smaller magazine of 20 rounds. So it's very deadly, but against 1 to 2 players at maximum before you need to reload. That's what kind of balances this weapon out. Now, the FG42 in real life was designed specifically as a paratrooper rifle. It was designed as something that could strap on to the German paratroopers so that they could land with a decent rifle that could engage targets at further ranges. Before this rifle, the Germans were dropping with just SMGs and small arms, and their rifles and machine guns had to be dropped separately, so they'd have to pick them up on the battlefield, and in some cases this proved very deadly as they had to actually run around and pick up their heavier fighting weapons while getting shot at, and so obviously this was not the best tactic in the long run. So the FG42 was designed as a weapon to try and solve this problem. Unfortunately for the Germans, it came out later in the war and was not implemented in mass quantities. Now, despite Battlefield 5 classifying this weapon as a light machine gun, it's not really one by definition. It's a select fire automatic rifle. Could be seen very similarly to the STG-44 in terms of its classification. My guess is that they gave it to the support class because it does have a bipod, and so you can go prone for some very accurate fires. The real life one had a bipod and even a bayonet holster. You can upgrade this weapon on the specialization with a bayonet up front, but I went for the entire right side progression tree for the most accurate fire. You can try and spec this to be a bit better with hipfire accuracy, which isn't necessarily the worst idea, but I feel like it's pretty darn good in close quarters regardless, so you may as well try and spec it for as much accuracy and recoil control as possible. With those 20 rounds, you don't have a lot of leeway to miss your shots, so you really got to hit as many shots as possible, so I just went for the accuracy tree all the way. Now, the FG42 does have some intense recoil. It was definitely my favorite gun during the beta, probably one of the better guns during the beta. DICE since then nerfed its recoil a bit, trying to reduce the ranged effectiveness of it, and they have done so pretty effectively. If you're lucky or you can control that recoil well enough, you can extend that range pretty well, or if you've got time to go into a prone position, you can really laser beam some targets at further ranges. So it's definitely an adaptable weapon. From standing up and shooting, it's more of a medium range engagement, and once you go prone, you can definitely extend out to further ranges. But just keep in mind, it's got some of the most intense recoil out of any of the support weapons, so I wouldn't classify it as a novice gun by any means, especially because of its limited magazine. Now, one good thing about its small magazine is that it can reload very quickly. It's got a standard magazine, side reload very quick, and so that helps you re-engage targets quickly. You just got to keep that in mind, that if you see 5 guys right in front of you, there's no way you're taking them out with one magazine. You got to be pretty darn tactical and have some good cover at the ready if you run into too many opponents. I find that my playstyle translates over really well from Battlefield 1 with many of the rifles in that game with limited magazines, especially the medics rifles that would limit you to 1 to 2 kills per mag. It kind of trained me up for the quick engagement, take cover, and reload fast. That's what the FG42 gameplay is like. It gives you that fast TTK so you can win that one-on-one firefight, but you got to get back behind cover and get that reload off ASAP. Otherwise, you're not going to survive that next engagement. Sidearms in this game usually aren't very powerful or aren't powerful enough to take on most of the primaries, which is a bit unfortunate. The Walther P38, although it's kind of a cool looking gun, it just was not a handgun I was excited to use as a backup to the FG42 because of of its intense powers in close range. When playing the recon class or something that is not effective in close range with its primary weapon, then I'm more inclined to try and switch to the sidearm to deal with close range threats. But with the FG42 and its fast reload, I just found that it made more sense to try and risk that speedy reload and get my primary weapon ready to engage a close quarter threat rather than rely on my sidearm. I just felt like the odds were generally better. Now, the FG42 is one of those weapons that I won't necessarily pick universally for all maps. It's pretty darn effective, and like I said, it can be extended in its ranged effectiveness, but it's not my #1 choice for medium or long range engagements. The support has some slower firing, more accurate machine guns. I would say the Lewis is probably a little bit better optimized for medium or longer range engagements than the FG42. So it's a weapon that I recommend for close range maps mostly. If I know I'm playing close quarters, then I'll go with the FG42. If I think that I'm going to be mixing it up a lot, maybe a little bit of close range, but mostly medium or long range, then I probably won't pick this weapon as my first choice. Also, you might notice that I've had some golden iron sights on at times with this weapon. I was sort of testing out the difference between the golden iron sights and the standard metal iron sights because they contrast better on certain environments and allow me to keep track of my iron sights. Unfortunately, the irons on this weapon I think just bounce around a bit too much, and it does make it pretty difficult to track targets at times. They also obstruct a lot of the screen, especially below where I'm aiming. So I'm not in love with the irons. Outside of this loadout, I sometimes run with the 3x optic. In fact, the real life version of this weapon did come with a mounted scope, so it's not inauthentic necessarily to have a magnified scope. It does bounce around a bit, but it gives me a clearer sight picture, and I feel like it allows me to engage a bit more effectively at medium range. It does make things a little bit trickier in close quarters. So optic wise, I haven't found an optic that feels like the best solution for this weapon. You just kind of have to play around and see what works the best for you. Definitely though, putting a little bit of chrome or golden finish on the irons helps me separate it from the background of what I'm fighting sometimes, because otherwise you put kind of a gray metal finish on those iron sights and you're fighting in a gray environment. Sometimes it just gets lost and it gets really hard to track your target. Now here you'll see me playing on Fiel, which I think is a perfect map for the FG42, especially on Conquest where it's not quite as choke pointed and you have the ability to run around and flank and sort of do a bit of running and gunning. The FG42 is an ideal weapon. Like, every engagement distance feels pretty much ideal aside from some of the super long range ones. And you just got to get used to tap firing it a bit more or doing some light burst firing with this weapon to help with some of those slightly longer range targets. If possible, go for some headshots, but this gun bounces around so much that you're really going to have to aim for center mass. So if you can land a first shot headshot and then follow up with center mass shots, that's kind of the ideal way to shoot this weapon. Here on Narvik, being aware of the bipod and using the windowsills to take advantage of that added accuracy makes a pretty big difference in just how quickly you can down your opponents even at medium range. The bipod helps you extend this weapon to longer range engagements, but at medium range you'll kill faster as you're going to land a lot more of those shots quicker. So just be aware that it always has a bipod and try and take advantage whenever possible. What's nice about having a bipoded weapon that doesn't need to be fired while it's bipoded means you don't have to worry about the clunky bipod mechanics. You can aim down sight, shoot at your target, and if the bipod activates, then great, you'll get added accuracy. If it doesn't activate, well, you still have a decent weapon that can still be burst fired at medium or longer ranges. As for grenades, I was using the Incendiary the most while playing this. The Incendiary is fun. I don't think it's actually the most effective support grenade. I think the Impact grenade is a bit more effective. What I like about both the Incendiary and Impact, though, is that they detonate on impact, and so basically that allows you to have an immediate effect where the standard grenade takes a while. The Impact's probably more effective at getting kills. The Incendiary can be effective at blocking off areas and giving you enough time to get a reload off. So play around with those two grenades, see which one you like the best. Anyway, that wraps it up for today's episode of Loadout. I highly recommend the FG42. It's a higher skill weapon, but if you put in the time and learn how to use it properly, you will be rewarded. And it also looks badass. I love the look of this gun. So highly recommended using the FG42. Maybe not with the iron sights. You got to play around, see what you like the best. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave your comments down below for next week's episode, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.